the chat box, type your name, your location, your name, your designation, and where you're joining us from. Also, we will have opening remark by our facilitator, Dr. Muda, and also presentation by the think tank operation by Mr. Stephen Daniels. Also, we'll have an overview and introduction of the new structure of the Industrial Policy Commission by Dr. Move, the facilitator of the Industrial Policy Commission. Also, we'll be having the NESG Industrial Sector Reform Agenda and Pathways by Ms. Lumunamanda PC, the co-facilitator, Industrial Policy Commission. Next, we'll have presentation of the 2025 work plan by Professor Peter Akpe, the mining thematic group lead, and also our facilitator will be doing that of the Dr. Muda Yusuf will be doing that of the manufacturing thematic group. Then we'll have a session where everyone in the call will be free, the floor will be open for questions, comments, and answers. Also, we'll be looking at closing remarks by our facilitator, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Can we go back to the first agenda? So up next is our facilitator, Dr. Muda Yusuf, giving the opening remarks. Sir, you have.
Thank you very much. As you can see, the opening remarks is supposed to be actually be delivered by Engineer Mansour Ahmed, the private sector co-chair, Industrial Policy Commission Steering Committee, but is unavoidably absent, so I will be presenting the opening remarks on his behalf. Opening remarks by Engineer Mansour Ahmed. Good afternoon, distinguished heads of ministries, departments, and agencies, esteemed members of the Industrial Policy Commission, captains of industry, heads of associations, development partners, members of the research community, and other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the second General Assembly of the Industrial Policy Commission. Today's session is dedicated to manufacturing and mining sectors, bringing together valued stakeholders, technical experts, and thematic group members who are driving these critical areas of national development. As part of its 2025 engagement plan, the Industrial Policy Commission is hosting 3 sector-specific General Assemblies. 1, the energy sector, which held on 29th April 2025, the manufacturing and mining sector, which we are gathered for today, and 3, the agricultural and marine and blue economy sector scheduled for 16th May 2025. Following the recent restructuring of the NESG policy commissions, the Industrial Policy Commission was reconstituted as one of the 6 strategic platforms with a renewed mandate to champion Nigeria's industrialization. Our mission is to shape a conducive policy and regulatory environment that drives innovation, competitiveness, sustainability, and inclusive economic transformation, particularly in sectors like manufacturing and mining, which serve as anchors of long-term national development. As global supply chains are reconfigured and the demand for critical minerals, local value addition, and regional manufacturing hubs intensifies, Nigeria must seize the window of opportunity to strengthen its position. Unlocking our industrial and mineral wealth requires bold reforms, investment in infrastructure and technology, improved ease of doing business, and robust partnerships between the public and private sectors. The Industrial Policy Commission brings together stakeholders from across governments, the private sector, academia, civil society, and international development partners. Through its 7 thematic groups, namely oil and gas, power, renewable energy, marine and blue economy, mining, manufacturing, and agriculture. The Commission is addressing deep-seated structural issues while creating pathways for job creation, productivity growth, and economic diversification. The General Assembly is more than a routine meeting. It is a collaborative platform for shared learning, strategic dialogue, and targeted advocacy. Your expertise and lived experience in these sectors are essential in shaping reforms that will not only expand Nigeria's manufacturing capacity, but also unlock the full responsible value of our natural resources. On behalf of the NESG and the leadership of the Industrial Policy Commission, I extend my appreciation, my sincere appreciation for your continued dedication and partnership in this vital work. I look forward to constructive discussions and the emergence of actionable policies strategies that will accelerate industrial transformation and competitiveness in the manufacturing and mining sectors. I wish you all fruitful deliberations. Thank you, Engineer Mansour Ahmed. So that is the opening remarks by Engineer Mansour Ahmed.
Thank you so much, sir, for presenting the opening remarks. Up next, presentation by the think tank operations on onboarding of new members and call for membership by Stephen Daniel, the Senior Associate Think Tank Operations NESG. You have the floor now. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Jackson, and good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'll quickly run through this presentation in the next 10-15 minutes on the mandate, strategy, and future of advocacy. At the NESG, there's a quote that encapsulates and captures a bulk of the work we do, and it's a quote that was made in 1984 by Kinden, where he says policy change and impact comes about when three streams, problems, politics, and policies connect. Each stream has its own force acting upon it and ultimately influencing it. He says that the streams do not just converge by chance, but rather from consistent and sustained action by advocates, which we believe most of you here today are advocates that are advocating to see how problems, politics, and policy connect to bring about change that affects and implement and improve the lives of Nigerian citizens at large. At the NESG, our vision is to be Africa's leading private sector think tank that is committed to the development of a modern, globally competitive and inclusive Nigerian economy. And our mission is to promote and champion the reform of the Nigerian economy into an open, inclusive, sustainable, and globally competitive economy. We have various values and guiding principles that guide our work. I will not bore you with that detail. You can check on our website, which you'll see at the end of the presentation, to read further on that. There are four strategic roles that the NESG play. One is as dialogue partner, the other is as connectors, as interveners, and then as accountability partner. As dialogue partners, we drive policy change through private-public dialogue platforms and engagement. We get crucial conversations to happen that not just stops at being conversation, but actually translates into decision making on all stakeholders' side. As connectors, we're driving policy change through networks and influence, either government to government, government to business, governments to citizens, or governments to business and to citizens. We expand the network of enlightened stakeholders that are acting on decisions that have been agreed upon through our dialogue platforms. As accountability partner, we provide evidence-based advocacy, leveraging our research scorecards, our policy products to build national consensus on policy performance and key issues that affects the life of everyone. And as intervener, we drive policy change through different interventions that I mentioned. We get this going by keeping compelling scorecards and reporting templates. We are guided at the NESG by a framework known as the public-private dialogue mechanism. So I'll briefly touch on that framework and the structure to give you more insight into how we function. We have various platforms at the NESG. One is the policy commissions, which is our main platform where these public and private sector networks and experts bring insight on various issues, and this is one of such policy commission that's having the General Assembly today. We also have roundtable, and we have the community of practice, and each of these groups have thematic working groups through which they function, and these thematic groups are made up of experts in their various fields. We also have a special task force on climate change. We have business council and then expert forums. Each has its own unique value and addition that it's making to the framework and making sure those three streams we talked about at the beginning are converging to bring about change. If you go to the next slide, this is the new Policy Commission. We used to have 12 policy commissions before, but there are now 6 of them. The Infrastructure Policy Commission, Education Policy Commission, the Health Policy Commission, Trade, Investment and Competitiveness Policy Commission, the Tourism, Hospitality, Entertainment, Creatives and Culturals and Sports Policy Commission, and this particular policy commission, the Industrial Policy Commission. In terms of our Business Council, there are 2 of them. We have the CEO Business Council on Food Security, and we have the Business Council on Digital Economy. We have a Special Task Force on Climate Action, Agenda and Implementation. We have a Financial Architecture Experts Forum, a Human and Economic Security Roundtable, the Community of Practice on Youth, and then the Community of Practice on Medium Small Scale Enterprises. What are the responsibility of volunteers for those that are not yet volunteers with the NESG? We expect that as a volunteer, you become an active member of this policy commission, choosing any of the thematic groups that you want to belong to. It's expected that you would attend your thematic group meetings at least once a month and 2 of the general assemblies. We expect that you contribute your quota in terms of time and expertise to identify thematic issues or action plan within that thematic group that you've chosen to join. And we also expect that you support the thematic lead in preparing policy briefs, articles, and then position papers on thematic issues that affect your thematic group. And what's our own value proposition to you as a member of the volunteer corps of the NESG? You will have the opportunity to, number 1, prepare your voice on a national level. You don't only stay at the local level, you go national. You champion reforms of your thematic area of interest and then have the opportunity to influence policy, all in the national interest. Because whatever we do at the NESG, you keep hearing that national interest as you go along. You work within that thematic group to influence policy, all in the national interest. You would also have access to in-house research and publications. You will receive outputs of published reports related to your thematic area of interest. There will be multiple opportunities to network and interact with like-minded professionals within your thematic group and also across thematic group and policy commissions at the NESG. And you get the opportunity to attend advocacy programs such as policy dialogues, breakfast meeting, public lectures, roundtables, and also conferences that are not strictly by invitation. The guiding principles that guide the public-private dialogue mechanism that I spoke about: open governance, process, structure, outputs in terms of policy brief, and the rest, outreach and communications. I'm sure most of you received emails and communications regarding this General Assembly that's happened at the moment. And there are also tools to help us evaluate and monitor the progress of each of these policy commission within the scope of work and their development partners to ensure sustainability for it. There are risks associated with this mechanism, and we've done our best as much as possible to safeguard ourselves against vested interest or the issue of not being fully representative, not only stopping as a talk show, but going into implementation and ensuring that there's actual change. There's risk of hijack, and we've put some mechanism in place to ensure that is not the case, or being politicized or duplicating efforts of another thematic group. All this is managed, our volunteers are managed by a system known as a volunteer management system, where you have the opportunity to not only interact with us, but also interact with other volunteers across board. It's a state-of-the-art management system that streamlines our management of the whole volunteering process, and it creates something that is very seamless for both you as our volunteers and stakeholders and ourselves at the Secretariat. There's opportunity to see some resources, material briefs that we've done is all there, and it serves as a communication hub and opportunities communication as well. So if you've not yet joined us or you're not yet on our volunteer management system, I invite you to please follow this link that is on your website and join us today and be part of the people that ensure that there's a convergence of problem, politics, and policy to bring about change for our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen Daniel, for the presentation. Do well to join us at the thematic group level and also at the PC level. Please. So, introduction of the Industrial PC Policy Commission by Dr. Muda, the facilitator of the Industrial Policy Commission. Sir, you are next. Sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, now the structure of the Industrial Policy Commission is as shown on the screen. And just as the private sector co-chair, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, said in his opening speech, and there was a restructuring of the policy commissions, and this has brought quite a number of strategic thematic groups under the Industrial Policy Commission. And this commission is tasked with the task of promoting and championing in Nigeria's industrialization by fostering a conducive policy environment that promotes innovation, competitiveness, and sustainable growth. We all know how important industrialization has been, and it still is. We all know what the risk an economy faces when it continuously faces a situation of deindustrialization. Sometimes when this degenerates, it's very difficult to correct. Just as we are seeing now with the experience of the United States of America. So in order to facilitate the delivery of the outcomes of rapid industrialization, these critical thematic groups have been identified as very strategic to industrialization. When we talk about industrialization, it's an interministerial thing, it's a cross-cutting issue. Quite a number of sectors, have to interplay to ensure that we bring about, the outcome of industrialization. That is why we have oil and gas, we have the agriculture thematic group, we have manufacturing, we have mining, we have marine and blue economy, we have renewable energy, we have power. All of these have critical roles to play. If you don't get it right with any of these thematic groups, it is very difficult to get it right, with our industrialization agenda. Industrialization is beyond manufacturing. Industrialization is the totality of the application of technology, to be able to ensure that across all sectors, there's an improvement in technology, in productivity. And it is productivity that drives competitiveness. It's competitiveness that drives, the growth of any economy. So that is why we have this kind of structure, which was put together by the NESG, recognizing the importance of industrialization and recognizing the critical pillars of industrialization as shown in the way that these thematic groups have been put together to come under the Industrial Policy Commission. It's a very strategic policy commission, and that is why we have a very critical role to play, and that is why it is important to harness as much knowledge and to promote as much synergy as we can among these various sectors and between these sectors and also the public sector of the economy. So essentially, this is what the Industrial Policy Commission is all about. Can you show the next slide if there is some other content there? Okay, so that is the summary of what it is. Over to you, Jackson.
Thank you so much, sir, for the overview of what the industrial sector is, Industrial Policy Commission is, Up next, industrial sector reform, agenda and pathway by Madam Lumun Amanda Fisi, the co-facilitator, Industrial Policy Commission. Welcome on board, ma'am, to share. Ma, are you with us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to myself. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I will be speaking about the industrial sector reform agenda that the NESG has adopted, which the Industrial Policy Commission is going to drive. So as long as NESG has been in existence, NESG has been championing the need for Nigeria to accelerate its industrialization. Sadly, almost 31 years after, Nigeria is still not regarded as industrialized. And as Dr. Muda explained earlier, industrialization is more than manufacturing, because a lot of us think, when we think of a nation being industrialized, we think of someone is speaking. Please, can you mute if you're... So we tend to think of manufacturing as, equating manufacturing with industrialization, but as Dr. Muda said, it's just a component of what makes a nation industrialized. So to put it mildly, as he said, industrialization involves combining, as in a nation like ours where we have natural resources, it's combining our natural resources with infrastructure development. So natural resource development, infrastructure development, technology development, educational development, financial sector development, macroeconomic stability, and then innovation and technology. So these all together need to be combined under an industrial policy in order to outline the path towards industrialization. So that means that what we're trying to do within the Policy Commission is also to work with the other NESG policy commissions on education, on even health, on infrastructure, which looks at rail and logistics, and also the initiatives on finance and climate action. So we'll be working, not just us in the Policy Commission, but we'll be working with all the other platforms that the NESG has, all the other policy commissions, as well as the other roundtables and initiatives. And the goal is, how do we get Nigeria industrialized by, it's a long shot, 2050, because that's the current industrial, the Nigeria Agenda 2050. So how do we do that? One is we need a strong industrial policy that speaks to our comparative advantage. And our comparative advantage is that we have natural resources, quite rich and diverse: oil, gas, mining, water resources, agriculture. The solar is also the sunlight, and even I think we even have wind capacity. So the solar capacity, all of that, and the human resources, we have a thriving, sorry, not thriving. We have a large youth population, which is also an advantage. It's a disadvantage because they are not fully, the opportunities for them to thrive are not there, but it's an advantage that we can also harness. Even where Nigeria is positioned regionally, access to international markets, we are the ports and so on. So all these comparative advantage, we need to harness together and then develop a pathway for converting it into a competitive advantage. So look at countries like Japan and South Korea. They don't have natural resources, but they count as one of the most industrialized nations of the world. And if you look at Japan, for instance, after World War II, it was completely ruined. But how did it achieve that without natural resources? So for us as a nation with natural resources, we have a head start. Unfortunately, governance has been an issue with the extractives, particularly oil, gas, and mining. So there's a lot of reforms that we need to undertake as part of the industrial sector development. We need to undertake natural resource development reforms. So in oil, gas, and mining. And then in agriculture, there are also governance issues there that are limiting our agricultural sector from thriving. So altogether, if we bring the reforms of these individual sectors together and, and have an industrial sector pathway under an industrial policy, we believe that we can achieve that task of, becoming industrialized. So we'll be taking lessons from countries like Japan, which I mentioned, it doesn't have natural resources. It's important to have a look at how it achieved that. And then more importantly is we are anchoring our natural resource industrialization strategy on countries that leverage their natural resources to become industrialized. So I'd like you to, after today's General Assembly, to also do some research on resource-based industrialization in the Nordic countries. These are countries that were not developed, had high levels of poverty and several development challenges after the Second World War. They were not as developed as their counterparts in Europe, like Germany and the UK. But with a resource-based industrialization strategy, they were able to, they were committed to it. They were able to move and become part of the industrialized world. So part of our work here is we are going to be conducting a study to assess Nigeria's industrial capability. We want to leverage the productive cluster that is still developing in the oil and gas sector based on the Nigerian Oil Sector Development Content Act, so local content for short, and then see how we can make that to be more advanced, taking lessons from Norway. And when we are able to build Nigeria's industrial capabilities in the oil and gas sector, we see how to migrate it to the other natural resource sectors. So just to also highlight that what we observed at the NESG and here in the industrial policy is that Nigeria's industrial strategy since the 60s, whether we're implementing import substitution or an export-oriented strategy, is that we focus more on producing consumer goods, converting our natural resources into finished goods. So, it could be oil palm into palm oil. It could be crude oil into refined products. But we've not paid attention to manufacturing the capital goods that will enable the extraction of our natural resources and processing them and converting them for use by our manufacturing sector. So we're still highly dependent on the advanced economies, including China, for all our equipment, almost all our inputs, almost all our equipment, machinery, technology, and even expertise. So these are issues that we aim to tackle in the Policy Commission, starting from this year. So even though we're supposed to have had our General Assembly much earlier in the year, because we're supposed to have developed our work plans, because we are a restructured policy commission, it was important for all the thematic groups to do a deep assessment into the challenges, the root causes of the challenges that have limited growth and competitiveness of the individual sectors under this policy commission, and then develop our advocacy strategy. So these advocacy strategies that the two thematic leads are going to present today are for 2025. And then hopefully by November, December, we should have a retreat with our members to chart, assess where we are and then chart the the program for the following year. So we want to take it year by year, even though we have a strategy for 5 years. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, and once again, I would please encourage all of you on the call to please join the Policy Commission. We are all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Dr. Muda, who just spoke, is a volunteer. We all have our day jobs. We have, some of us have firms, some of us work for multinationals, some of us, work for government, but we're all here volunteering our time and efforts. We are tired of, being armchair critics. Some of us were armchair critics. We are writing on Facebook or writing on Instagram. We are frustrated, with the pace of development of Nigeria. But NESG and this Policy Commission offers you that opportunity to influence change. Change is slow, but as the NESG says, advocacy is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So once we start the journey, we're not deterred by the slow progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Amanda. We are now going to take the mining thematic group's work plan. Professor Peter, please.
Thank you very much. I'm making the presentation on the mining thematic group's work plan for 2025. Next slide. Thank you. The Nigerian mining sector really is one that is Nigeria is reputed to have been endowed with a lot of mineral occurrences. Statistically, the reports say that we have about 44 different mineral resources and located in about 450 locations across the country, including the Federal Capital Territory. But we have not been able to translate this mineral occurrences into assets that can actually be developed and exploited for the benefit of the country. And that has been responsible for the poor performance of the sector, so to speak. We notice that the sector's contribution to GDP has gradually declined from the 4% that it was between 1960s and the 70s, and perhaps early 80s, to less than 1% in the 90s and 20s. That shows that the potential of the sector has not been realized and that the sector is underperforming. So we have looked at what are the root causes, and although there are many, for the purpose of this presentation, we've decided to just group them into 4. The first has to do with the issue of governance of the sector. At the moment, Nigeria operates a centralized mineral resource governance system where the ownership and control of mineral resources is vested in the government of the Federation, to the exclusion of the subnational governments. So what has happened is that the subnational governments are not involved in the mineral governance at all. Therefore, issues of accountability at that local level and coordination, particularly with community engagement, is very low because of the non-inclusion of the subnationals in the governance of the sector. Another important governance challenge we are experiencing in the sector is the fact that the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development has been left with the regulatory functions of the ministry, of the sector. The ministry is combining both regulatory functions and policy functions together, and that has not been quite effective. The ministry is not, it's not wired for a regulatory function that is performing at the moment, apart from not having the requisite technical capacity. It does not, there's no regulatory independence, which is required of any sector regulator. Unlike other economic sectors that we are witnessing, for instance, the telecoms industry, the power sector, and lately the petroleum sector, where indeed they have two regulators. So we feel that the absence of a sector regulator for the mining industry is responsible for some of the disorderly practices that are taking place in the sector, and that we need to begin to look at it with a view to dealing with the problem. There's also the issue of weak interagency coordination among various stakeholders, particularly the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, the Bureau for Public Enterprises, the ICRC, Federal Inland Revenue Service, CBN, and all other sectors that really have bearing on this sector. There's no effective communication, there's no effective coordination amongst them, and this has exacerbated the governance issues we have in the mining sector. The second major root cause is can be grouped under the commercial challenges that we have. In this regard, we are concerned about the fact that the reform strategy in the sector, particularly around prospecting, has been that we have tended to show a great bias for greenfield prospects as against reopening our legacy mines. When you look at the exploration strategy that we have in the country, it negates the fact that Nigeria is a mining jurisdiction. It gives an impression we never had a mining culture at all. But before now, we know that the Nigerian Mining Corporation, the Nigerian Coal Corporation, and Nigerian Iron Ore Mining Company all had mines, and other private mines also existed. But we have tended to focus on greenfield prospecting than reopening our legacy mines in such a way that we can harness the data that we encourage other investors to come in. And other countries that have taken this approach have actually been able to attract investment to their jurisdictions. And I give examples of Mauritania, Tanzania in Africa here, Argentina, and so on. These are countries that their reforms in this respect actually focus on trying to reopen their brownfields and provide adequate data that attracted investment to this sector. So we believe that it's a problem, and that's something that we need to begin to look at how we can harness our legacy mines and improve on the data so as to attract investments into the area. The other problem is financial, of course. Here, we find out that we have the absence of a mining finance ecosystem at the grassroots, particularly because our miners, particularly or junior miners, junior mining companies, really need the kind of financial support that will enable them de-risk their investment to a level where they can become bankable and attract investment, even from the Solid Minerals Development Fund and other institutions that are ready to provide financing for this sector. And so we believe that there's a need for us to begin to look at ways in which we can ensure that there's an ecosystem, a finance ecosystem that will be able to support these grassroots miners, with whom we call juniors, at that early exploration stage, so that they can be able to package their investment by de-risking it and making it bankable. Another challenge that we have also noticed is on the economic front. And in the economic front here, basically, we have noticed that there's weak linkages between the mining sector and other economic sectors. The mining sector has actually developed as an enclave without proper integration, other vertical or horizontal integration with other sectors. Therefore, the multiplier effect that we expect to get from the sector has been limited because of its poor linkages. We need to have a sector that actually takes advantages of its preeminent position in trying to catalyze development along line by ensuring that there's proper backward and forward integration, side integrations as we have here. Particularly, we are not seeing companies setting up shops around mining clusters in such a way that they can take advantage of this, as what has happened in other countries, particularly the Nordic countries, which Ms. Amanda Facey was talking about earlier. So these are some of the problems and the root causes of the, if you like, the decline on the mining sector, which we believe, if adequately tackled, can help to revamp the sector, revitalize it, and reposition it for it to contribute effectively to the economic development of the country and also to the GDP of the country. Next slide, please. So in trying to deal with these problems, the thematic group has developed two advocacy issues around these problems and how we are going to tackle it. The first issue is reforming, which we target reforming Nigeria's mining policy and governance framework for inclusive governance, economic diversification, and industrialization in line with the African mining vision. As you all are aware, the African mining vision is the gold standard in terms of policy in this sector, and that African heads of states and government had actually signed on to the African mining vision as far back as 2009. And so we believe that time has come for us to begin to look at our policy direction and reform so that we can ensure that they are in line with the African mining vision. So in this regard, our advocacy will be around issues like reforming legal and policy framework so as one, to integrate the subnational governments with the mineral resource governance of the country through a mixed system that is practiced in many mining jurisdictions. When I talk about a mixed system, I'm talking about the fact that we need to have a situation where both the subnational governments and the central government are involved in mineral governance. And there are issues that the subnationals can best deal with. And those issues actually should be left to subnationals to deal with. Because what we have in Nigeria at the moment is a situation where the subnationals are completely left out, and because of that, for issues that they believe have a bearing on their environment, they have taken initiatives, perhaps maybe not within the confines of the law, because the Constitution does not give regulatory powers to the subnational government, but they have done that through executive orders and so on. Some have even gone to the extent of banning mining activities and so on, or creating other regulatory conditions over and above the ones that have been provided by the federal government. So there's a need for us to begin to deal with this matter. And other jurisdictions have done this by ceding some of the powers to the subnationals, maybe issues of environmental management, licensing at district level, district licensing for artisanal miners and so on have been left the level of the subnationals to deal with. That way, there's a sense of belonging, and they also feel that they have a stake in it. And of course, apart from improving community relations, it also increases accountability at that level. So our advocacy will be around these issues to ensure that there's appropriate reforms that will usher in this kind of arrangement that we believe would be better for the development of the sector. We also are very much concerned about the fact that when reforms were carried out in other economic sectors, particularly the ones that were spearheaded by the Bureau for Public Enterprises and the National Council on Privatization, there was a clear separation of policy rules from regulatory rules in those reforms that were carried out by the BP and the National Council on Privatization. And that gave rise to sector regulators who had powers to effectively regulate the sector, and that has accounted for the development of the power sector with NEC as a regulator, the telecommunications sector as the NCC as the regulator. Now, with the advent of the PIA in the petroleum industry, they have two industry regulators who are also dealing with that. So that makes, this actually highlights the fact that a sector cannot actually be effectively regulated if it does not have an independent regulator with clear regulatory powers. For the mining industry, unfortunately, the reforms were warehoused in the Ministry of Solid Minerals, and they were not appropriately carried out like it was done in the other sectors because BP was not involved and all that. So you still have a situation where both policy functions and regulatory functions are merged in one establishment, that is the Ministry of Solid Minerals. And we can see from what the orderly activities that are taking place in the industry, see that, look, this is not working. And so our advocacy around these issues will also be that we need to, time has come for us to also have an independent regulator for the mining sector that will have that regulatory capacity in terms of independence, in terms of control, and to be able to exercise these functions. Next slide, please. Now, so around this first issue, we have some activities that we have outlined that we intend to carry out to be able to achieve that objective. First would be partner engagements with other stakeholders that we believe are instrumental and can be useful in this regard. We've had discussions with the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. We've had discussions with NESG. The idea is to begin to, we have had discussions with BP and all, and so the idea is to begin to align our advocacy on these key issues with these major partners so that at the end, we'll be able to achieve the results that we want to do. How are we going to do that? We want to have a high-level, we're going to convene a high-level session of multi-stakeholder dialogue to validate some of the reform proposals that we're putting forward. We'll try to build consensus around these areas to ensure that those who are close watchers of the sector really know what is happening and are able to come on board in respect to some of these issues that we're talking about. This we hope to achieve between now, May and July, as much as possible. Then we will have public-private dialogues that we also believe that are useful in this sector, particularly the ones that we have during the Nigerian Economic Summit Group pre-summit meetings. So we believe that in the months of June and July, these public-private dialogues will take place, particularly on some of these issues that we intend to push in an advocacy plan. And then, of course, at the Economic Summit in October, during our mining session, these are the issues that we will focus on at the Nigerian Economic Summit in October. Also, apart from engagements, we want to also carry out some studies so as to be able to come up with some of the, provide evidence-based information on some of the issues we're talking about. So we want to carry out studies on mineral resource federalism and political economy analysis. We want to do something on green minerals and the energy transition strategy. All of this is to give us the kind of data, give us that kind of information that can support some of the reforms that we are advocating. And in this regard, we would engage with our donors to mobilize funds for these studies in the month of May and July. We'll also commission the researches between the, some of them for a period of 3 to 6 months, and actually we need to develop a policy framework, develop reform roadmap, and propose government forms a multi-stakeholder steering committee in the sector. We believe that if we bring all the necessary stakeholders in the sector together in form of a steering committee, then it will be much easier to be able to agree, have a broad-based consensus on some of the issues that we are talking about, and that will ensure that the advocacy becomes more effective through that stakeholder steering committee. Of course, coordinations will take place based on our monthly thematic group meetings and industrial policy commission reporting standards that we have. So we believe that this will take place both in Q2 to Q4 and Q2 to enable us be able to achieve this objective. Next slide. Next slide. So the second issue, which we want to go back one slide, please. Thank you. The second issue which we want to concentrate our advocacy on is unlocking investment and developing an indigenous junior mining sector for a competitive and sustainable mining sector. So in this regard, we want to look at issues of updating the geoscience data on our legacy mines and how they can be privatized, because we feel that what needs to be done is for the data to be updated on the legacy mines, and perhaps privatize these assets in such a way that it can attract credible investors in this regard. So we will be advocating around these areas, and that hoping that we can achieve this objective. Also, we will look at how to establish a structured mining finance ecosystem anchored on the Nigerian exchange using simplified listing requirements built on the African Mining Vision, AMREC, and PAC instruments. The AMREC is the African Mineral and Energy Resources Classification. Actually, what it does is that it's a standardized mineral classification system that makes it easier for us to be able to understand it. Then the PAC, which is also an accompanying instrument, really makes it, it's Pan-African Resource Reporting Code. It makes for improved transparency, fair revenue generation, and of course, ethical investment. So we hope to leverage these instruments in this process in such a way as to ensure that we are able to package mining companies in such a way that we can take them to the exchange, perhaps through the holding company that we are looking at, to ensure that they can access the necessary finance they need to discharge their responsibility. So in doing this, we'll be looking at the mining corporation. The BP had actually incorporated a holding company with the Murphy as the one holding the shares on behalf of government, really. And that had existed before the Nigerian Solid Minerals Corporation that has just been established. But the point we are trying to talk about here is that we believe that there's a general belief that the federal government needs to inject more funds in the sector to make it actually viable for private sector investment. And this can be done through this holding company. And we believe that if that happens, those holding companies will now concentrate more on our brownfield mines and be able to revive them. And then, of course, with that, prepare them for privatization, which eventually through the Nigerian exchange. So this is the pathway that we believe that we can be able to improve on the sector. Next slide. So again, on the issue 2, our advocacy activities will also start again with engaging with partners to align the advocacy with them on key issues that we have identified. This again will happen between May to June. There will be high-level multi-stakeholder dialogue as we had proposed in respect of issue 1, and to build consensus. There will be public-private dialogues during the pre-summit and at the summit level, again, on these issues, so as to ensure that they are kept on the banner and that people are actually sensitized about it. To also achieve this objective, we believe that some studies will be required. In this regard, there will be junior mining and mining finance ecosystem studies on it. There will be studies to operationalize the African Mining Vision, private sector compact in Nigeria to facilitate development of an indigenous junior mining sector. We will also continue to engage with our donors to be able to mobilize funds for these activities, and I believe this can happen between now and July. And of course, like we had done with issue 1, we are going to commission researches that would last between 3 to 6 months to be able to achieve this objective. The coordinations will normally be done through the monthly meetings of the thematic group, of course, and of the reportings of the industrial policy commissions that will take place between quarter 2 to quarter 4. I believe these are some of the activities that we have lined up for the mining thematic group, and hopefully with your support and active engagement, we should be able to execute them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much,
I now yield my time to I yield my time back to Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the time. And I'll call on Dr. Muda for the manufacturing session. However, if you have questions, get ready for your questions so that we'll start taking it after Dr. Muda's session. Thank you so much. I call on our facilitator, Dr. Muda, to take the next presentation. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Prof, for that very educative presentation. Next slide. Now, we'll be looking at the manufacturing thematic group. As I said earlier, manufacturing is very critical for security, for growth, and for welfare, for advancement of any economy. If the largest economy on the continent, like the US, suddenly woke up to realize that it is important to produce domestically, talk less of a country like us. So we need to take manufacturing much more critically. So when we look at the manufacturing thematic group and looking at the key problems in the sector, as you can see on the screen, look at issues of weak governance, policy implementation, policy inconsistency, regulatory instability, and weak federal and state coordination. As we'll engage the authority, because the whole essence of this conversation is to be able to outline issues and strategies for engagement with the authorities to ensure that we have a much better environment for production, for competitiveness, for growth, for job creation. That is the ultimate objective. So issues of weak governance and policy implementation is very key. We are seeing many instances where we have policies of government which on paper look very good for industrialization, for manufacturing, for local content, for patronage of locally made goods. But when it comes to implementation, it's a completely different story. So we recognize weak policy implementation and governance as a major issue. Also related to that is the issue of policy inconsistency. A few years ago, we used to produce tires domestically. We had Dunlop, we have Michelin, and they were doing very well. But suddenly, there was a change in import policy. It became cheaper to be importing than to be producing locally. So that is what led to the collapse of both Michelin and Dunlop. And these were industries that were doing very well. So that's an example of the kind of challenge that policy inconsistency can create. And manufacturing or production generally are long-term projects. They are not amenable to frequent changes because whoever is investing in manufacturing wants to have a long-term horizon around policy, around regulation, and all of that. So that is why if you want to ensure that we support investors and attract new investment into manufacturing, we need to ensure that policies are consistent and regulations don't change frequently. Those things poses a major risk to manufacturing investment. Because we have seen cases where regulation suddenly changes, either the fees that you pay or the regulatory regime and all of that. Those things weaken investors' confidence when we are talking about long-term investment. And federal-state coordination is also extremely very important. Prof mentioned a bit of that as it affects the mining sector. It's also the same thing for manufacturing. If there is no proper coordination between the federal and the states, it could pose a major issue for manufacturing. Because if on one hand, the government is trying to promote industrialization, promote manufacturing, and on the other, the states where those industries are residing are making life difficult for those states. It could be a major issue, could pose a major conflict for investors. So federal state coordination is extremely very important. Then on issues of commercial consideration, and under this, we are looking at issues that relate to the core infrastructure that are needed for industrialization. We are looking at issues of energy, which is power essentially. We are looking at issues of the transport network, fragmented logistics, challenges at the ports, and so on and so forth. We cannot have a competitive manufacturing sector if we don't have sound infrastructure, if we don't have excellent logistics. Because manufacturing by nature involves the movement of heavy items, either finished goods or raw materials. So if you are dealing with a country or a situation where you have to be moving these things on very bad roads, long distances, the rail system is not so efficient, and so on and so forth, those things create competitiveness challenges for manufacturing. So if we don't want to find ourselves in a situation that the US has found itself today, where practically all the consumer goods are being imported, we need to address this. It is not that we don't have the manufacturers here. It's not that we don't have the entrepreneurs here. But when the cost of production has become very prohibitive as a result of these critical infrastructure issues, it poses a major problem. So as part of our advocacy, this is a very important element of engagement with the authorities. And that is why when we talk about manufacturing or industrialization, it's a cross-cutting issues. You have to relate with many agencies of government, to be able to, bring the desired impact on manufacturing competitiveness. Then, of course, you have the issue of high cost of capital and illiquidity. That is also a major issue. It's a very challenging issue because under the current reforms, the central bank is committed to fighting inflation using the tool of inflation targeting. And the main instrument that the CBN has under the current dispensation is to increase interest rates. That is the cash reserve ratio, which is currently at 50%, which is the highest in the whole world. We have the monetary policy rate, which is 27.5, which is also one of the highest in the whole world. And on top of that, we have a cash liquidity ratio of 30%. So that has squeezed liquidity even within the financial system. Because if you take 50% cash reserve ratio, if you add that to, 30% liquidity ratio, we are talking practically about 80% of the deposits that have been partially encumbered or substantially encumbered, if I may say so. So this creates issues of liquidity, and interest rates currently is anywhere between 25 to 30%. In some instances, as high as 35%. So it's a very challenging issue. If you don't want our country to become a dumping ground, especially now that we are getting into AFCFTA, we need to address the issue of the cost of fund for those who are in production and other operators in the economy, so that we can, be able to be competitive. Then, of course, you have the issue of, the macroeconomic issues macroeconomic instability, currency depreciation, high inflation. All of these things affect costs. Because unfortunately, we have a manufacturing sector that is also highly import dependent. That is one of the major challenges that we're also having structurally. It's one of the dysfunctional issues that we have with our manufacturing sector. Because the more import dependent the manufacturing sector is, the less competitive they will be, and the less they'll be able to impact, have multiplier effect and impact on jobs and other developmental variables in the economy. So as part of our advocacy agenda is to see how we can also ensure that we see more of backward integration. I will come to that in due course. But generally, the macroeconomic environment is an issue, but I must admit, in the last 1 year or so, the stability has improved, unlike what we had in 2023, getting to maybe early part of 2024. But from the second half of 2024, we have seen some stability. So it's a bit of a relief. And we know that during the period when the system was so volatile, some manufacturing sector, particularly those multinationals, some of them had to leave the economy. They left the country because they have very high foreign exchange exposure. And when your foreign exchange exposure is high and you are dealing with sharp depreciation, high volatility, there's no way the business can survive. That is why some of them had to leave the country. And many of them that didn't leave, many of them posted heavy losses, including the telcos. It's only this year that they are beginning to recover from the shocks of those reforms. So macroeconomic stability is extremely very important. Again, this will require interface with our Fiscal Policy Commission, our Monetary Policy Commission, thematic groups, to see that we have a macroeconomic environment that is much more stable. Economic insecurity and, energy insecurity, that's also very important. I discussed the issue about energy. We are still struggling with our energy situation. Our power sector group, we have a thematic group on energy. They are dealing with this. They have a robust study that they have done to address the core challenges of liquidity, of investment in the power sector, especially. It's a major issue. As we speak now, it's one of the biggest challenges next to issue of insecurity is the challenge of energy. Because without energy, you cannot have a competitive manufacturing sector. You cannot have industrialization. So energy security is at the heart of industrialization, is at the heart of competitive production, is at the heart of economic transformation. So this is a major issue that we are dealing with alongside the issue of macroeconomic stability. Next slide. So as we engage the authorities, of course, we will ensure that we focus a lot more on reducing the high production costs and improving the competitiveness of the manufacturing sector. This has a lot to do with the environment for production, and of course, issues of taxation and the regulatory environment. We have just been told that the tax reform bills have been passed. We need further engagement on this bill to ensure that the regulatory framework is such that it doesn't hurt the manufacturing sector. Because for a sector that is as strategic as manufacturing, there has to be a lot of concessions. Some of these concessions are contained in the bill. And at the appropriate time, of course, we invite the chairman of that committee, to engage with this with the NESG to throw more light on what kind of impact or relief the tax reform bill will bring to manufacturing. That will be a very useful exercise to have before the end of the year. Of course, ensuring that we improve competitiveness. There's also a pending economic stabilization bill. The bill is in the National Assembly, but deliberation on that bill has not started because the bill was overshadowed by the tax reform bill. So anytime from now, I'm sure that bill will be put on the table for consideration by the National Assembly, and we are getting ready to also be part of the debate or conversation on that when it is fully unveiled. But the whole essence of the economic stabilization bill is to come up with a bill that will create the right kind of fiscal environment, regulatory environment to support businesses, including manufacturing. That is our expectation from the bill. And also, of course, we should have conversation around policy implementation. A policy can only be as good as its implementation. So we have a major issue with capacity for policy implementation. Of course, we welcome the recent policy of government on Nigerian first. It's something similar to the American first policy, that whatever we are producing locally, government agencies would not be allowed to import them. That's a very good policy. Again, it's about implementation, because before now, you have the Executive Order 003, Executive Order 005, which were meant to ensure that we domesticate procurement. But there has been no implementation. So in the NESG, we are going to emphasize the need to ensure implementation, because that is what will make the difference in all of this. Next slide. So in terms of advocacy strategy, of course, we have to align with the key stakeholders in this space, because we can't do it alone. Partnership is very key to achieve the right kind of results. Partnership within the private sector, partnership between the private sector and the public sector. That is very central to advocacy, to getting the right kind of advocacy outcome. We host a multi-stakeholder dialogue on economic stabilization. We strengthen our public-private dialogues in terms of manufacturing at the manufacturing section at the NESG pre-summit. So these are some of the things. Of course, we could develop guidelines for developing the Tax Reform Act regulations. I referenced that earlier. We have to work closely with our relevant policy commission and possibly even the Presidential Committee itself to ensure that we have a regulatory framework that is fit for purpose, that is support manufacturing, so that we don't see a situation where the regulatory framework will now put even more burden on the Nigerian manufacturing sector. Next slide. Then we have to address issue of unlocking finance for improving manufacturing competitiveness. The cost of fund is prohibitive. There is no way any manufacturing business can survive under this. Even those who are managing to survive, maybe they are surviving because of their size, because maybe they have some monopoly powers, they have opportunities of economies of scale. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to undertake any production with an interest rate that is 25%, 30%. So issue of financing is extremely very key. We know that under the previous administration of the central bank, there was a lot of intervention funds to support production. We agree that there were a lot of abuses, but again, we should not throw away the baby in the bathwater. We still need some element of development finance to be more robust. I'm aware that we have the BOI, we have the Bank of Agriculture, which has just recently been recapitalized. We have the Development Bank of Nigeria, but we need to impress on government to make them a lot more robust so that they can fill the financing gap a lot more for the Nigerian manufacturing sector. And the advantage they bring to the financing space is that first, they provide low-cost fund, 10% or even less. They also provide long-term funds, because we cannot undertake manufacturing with all these short-term funds, 90 days, 1 year, and all of that. that is not a kind of fund that is good to support industrialization in any form. So unlocking finance for improving manufacturing competitiveness is extremely very important. So our our fiscal policy commission, our monetary policy thematic groups, of course, in conjunction with our engagement with the central bank and all of that, will bring all of this into focus. Now, while we recognize the fact that we are having the orthodox monetary policy, we should create a window that recognizes that this is a developing economy that requires some concessionary financing for those in the real sector of the economy. So at that point, I think we cannot overemphasize it in our advocacy process. Next slide. I think I've discussed alignment with key stakeholders, holding multi-stakeholder dialogue. We have a manufacturing financing strategy. These are studies that we have to do. We need to also ensure that we have the right kind of funding for all of this, because in NESG, the emphasis is on evidence-based advocacy. So you don't just talk qualitatively, you support it with quantitative or empirical data and evidence to show, to demonstrate that there's a major financing gap in terms of the tenure of fund and in terms of the cost of fund, for the real sector of the economy. Next slide. Okay, thank you very much. I think those are that is my presentation, or that was my presentation on the manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. I don't know if there's anyone with question. You can raise your hand.
I was going to say something. Hi.
Okay, Mr. Kelvin.
Dr. Muda, hi. How are you today?
You are there.
I saw that Dr. Muda, hi. I saw you mentioned cost of funds and the inflation to interest yield curve and the interest rates in Nigeria because of inflation. And there is a point I've brought out severally, on the cash reserve ratio of Nigerian banks. And these are a point I think NESG needs to take cognizance of. The cash reserve ratio, of course, Dr. Muda, you understand, is a tool central banks use to, control money supply. And in 2014, when Emefiele was governor, it was 14%. Today, it is 50%. When he left 2 years ago, it was 32.5%. And what they did from 14% to 32.5% was basically mop up cash from customer deposits, and they used to lend to the government to do ways and means. We all know how that went, So you have discretionary, non-discretionary, CRR. And for me, I believe that a blanket CRR on banks without a tiered system that takes into cognizance the performance of their loan deposit ratio is not a very smart system to adopt, because your CRR also has an impact on the amount of liquidity the banks have to be able to do lending to the real sector. And it also has an impact on the cost of funds, So I think something NESG needs to take cognizance of and adopt is linking CRR to LDR, creating a tiered system that rewards banks for having responsible loan deposit ratio books. So you don't have a blanket CRR, because, banks right now are complaining that based on Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act, BOFIA of 2020, I'm aware BOFIA was amended in COVID year. The CBN has not developed like a regulatory gazette that creates like a scale for discretionary fines that banks are charged based on abuse of the BOFIA. So you've had a sharp increase in fines from CBN to banks. And that's also affecting their capital adequacy ratio because, CRR are customer deposits. If you debit from it as discretionary, they have to use shareholder funds to mark up that deficit. So, I'm basically like saying that one thing that the NESG can use as an advocacy tool to engage the government is to suggest the idea of linking CRR to LDR as a means to reward banks have better LDRs, low NPL, non-performing loan ratio, and create more liquidity for banks to lend to the real sector in Nigeria. Because you check the interest income of a lot of banks, check the financials, see a lot of them are doing great interest income from government securities. And if you have a situation where banks are making more money from government securities than they're making from lending to the real sector, then you have a problem because banks are doing very well, manufacturing companies are dying. So I just said I should mention this point. Thank you.
So is there anyone with questions and comments before?
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you. That was a good intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muda.
So is there anyone with questions, comments? The floor is open. So you can start. You can just unmute and speak. I call on Mr. Patrick. You can open.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much to all the presenters and most importantly, the NSG group that is doing so well in trying to get our country to start working. I really want to talk specifically about mining. Mining is extremely crucial to any economy. Obviously, we've heard about what America is doing today, scrambling to develop their manufacturing sector. We that have our country that have abundant raw material, how do we think outside the box? Not even there is no box. How do we get locally? And I'm quite happy there's a synergy between the mining and manufacturing together. A lot of manufacturers in Nigeria today are using raw material that are derivable from local mining sector. How do we do the matchmaking within this group to see what kind of product, even though they might be coming as a raw material, primary raw material, what is it that they need to bring it to the quality parameter in which they will use for their manufacturing? Because I think that if we start solving these local problems, we will give the confidence to the financial sector to understand more, because they are not seeing the relationship, organic relationship being developed by people that mine, and then there are people that uses those raw material. So if we internalize the raw material use locally and give confidence for most of those mines to come operational, the bank will now see the capacity that is organically being developed and then find a more unique way to come in and enable the transactions. But first of all, I'm talking about matchmaking between the manufacturers in the group and the mining company. Is there any product that we are currently mining that they can use in their processes that are presently being imported with all the vagrancies of the foreign exchange thereof? And if we develop that relationship further, the companies, the manufacturers that are looking for foreign exchange can actually partner with the mining companies to now increase their production, carry out exports, and then they will have the foreign exchange that they deserve. So I just want us to see how we can think outside the confined space to see if we can start solving these problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick, for the comment. Are there any other questions? I think there's something on the
I think you should get someone to answer it. Maybe Prof.
Yeah,
or I can chip in.
Okay,
Patrick, thank you very much. So what we're trying to do here, that was a very valid question. The linkages is not just manufacturing and mining, is just because we couldn't hold all the general assemblies together. So we found a way to group them. Last week, we had the General Assembly for energy. So we have thematic groups for power, for renewable energy. We have another one for oil. We have another one for gas. So we had the GA for those ones last week, I think. Then today is for manufacturing and mining. Next week is for agriculture and the blue economy. But what you said is relevant, and it's part of the backwards integration. It's part of, the whole resource-based industrialization is how do we leverage our natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, agriculture, the maritime resources, the solar, how do we leverage it to industrialize so that we're using them to produce consumer goods, which Nigeria is already doing, and produce capital goods for these sectors and for the manufacturing sector. So after all this, we also have, apart from these thematic groups, we have the work we're going to do on industrialization, where we bring all these different sectors that are under our policy commission together in conjunction with other key sectors like education and logistics, infrastructure, under an industrial policy. So that integration that you've talked about between mining and manufacturing, we are going to tackle that between manufacturing and agriculture, between manufacturing and all the natural resource sectors. And then, in some cases, you find that there's an integration of all these sectors together. There are common factors. There's a common linkage, a way to link all of them together. And then with manufacturing, so not just individually, but all together towards accelerating industrialization. But thanks for bringing it up. It will come up under the industrial policy work. Thank you. So just to add, just to add is that at this stage, at the individual thematic groups, we are focusing on the reforms that are, that are peculiar to those individual sectors. So Prof talked about the constitutional, the policy, legal, regulatory reforms to address those gaps, and then, mining financing and building a junior mining sector. So those are individual sector reforms. Dr. Muda talked about manufacturing. That's, peculiar to manufacturing. The same with the energy sector. And next week, we're looking at reforms that are peculiar to each of those sectors. And under the industrial policy work, we're talking about integration. Thank you.
Hello.
Jackson, are you there? Tosin is raising up his hand.
Yes. Good evening, sir, Prof.
Go ahead, please.
I really appreciate the time you take to your presentation. Sorry, I'm a bit late, but I know you must have said a lot of things, but I'm very happy I still made this meeting. So, I'm Abdul Gafar, a geophysicist, and I manufacture a locally made resistivity meter in Nigeria for mineral exploration, most especially the critical minerals. So to be honest, this is just what I've been doing, and there has not been support, and I've been struggling to make something out of nothing, using the locally sourced material. to manufacture this equipment. So I'm trying to like link this with the mining we've been talking about in terms of mineral exploration. So as I've said, I've got a very small company trying to manufacture a resistivity meter. So how does this platform or the NESG support this kind of a small company, or any advice on this? I don't know if you've talked about that, but I would like to know how this type of company that produces this locally sourced equipment in terms of mining and coal. Thank you very much.
Prof,
Hello?
I think that's for Prof.
Yeah, that's all for now, sir.
Yeah, Prof, over to you.
Abdul Gafar, I would advise that you please join our policy commission, because what you've talked about is not going to be handled at the thematic group level. It's going to be under the industrial policy work, which is, around enhancing Nigeria's capability to also manufacture capital goods. So what you're doing, which is, the equipment for use in the mining sector. So we need more people like you, and then scale you up. So please join the policy commission so that once we start working on that, you can be part of the. We don't have individual support. We're looking at how do we present a solution to the government to support companies like yours to scale up. Please join the policy commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Danny, you can speak. I can see your hand.
Please, sorry, how do I join the policy commission, please?
I don't know if you're answering
Damilola,
that
your
question.
hand is up. You want to speak?
Okay. Yes, please. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for Dr. Muda and everyone. Thanks for all the wonderful presentations. I just have one very, I don't want to call it a minor comment, but something that I think is quite germane to everything that we're doing. I've noticed that a lot of government orders, such as all these executive order 003, 005, which has been in existence since, I think, 2017, 2018, are being brought back lately without anything being done to them in the past, meaning that implementation is poor or non-existent. And I've seen a lot of efforts that advocacy groups, take on, which is have different kind of conversations and meetings, workshops, seminars, and all of that. I'm just thinking that, is there a way that we can make this advocacy a lot more proactive, whereby, it's more evidence-based, where we can use data, case studies, and how this efforts, where if we can leverage the economic impact of all that's been proposed or has been done elsewhere, to make it obvious that non-implementation is only going to continue to worsen our situation. Because again, if I have a bucket list of brilliant ideas and the same government is not as responsive as we would expect, there's going to be limited results, and this has been proven for some time now. That's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dami. What you've really said is around the political economy of implementing reforms in Nigeria. You know, sometimes it's just a case of capacity. Unfortunately, there are times where the chief executive of the MDAs that or an MDA that the person's ego, refusing to interact with stakeholders and get ideas. Sometimes it could be vested interest. So sometimes what we do here in NESG is to conduct a political economy. So we already know at some given point who is an ally for a particular reform, then how powerful is that person or that institution. We also then look at who are the stakeholders that are against the reform. Then try to understand why are they against the reform. Is there any external maybe more highly placed person that we can get to that can influence that person or so on. Or sometimes, even though we've done the political economy, we can't just move the needle. So it's a case of sometimes just waiting for the right opportunity. So the thing here is for us to be prepared. There are studies that we'll do. For instance, with mining, we had a diagnostic report that we published 2 years ago in Thematic Group. We prepared a policy brief last year on everything Prof presented. And for the past 2 years, we've not been able to meet the minister. Doesn't mean we stopped trying. Unfortunately, it's just a clash of schedules, between the schedule and the NESG, but 2 years have passed. So we're still talking to other stakeholders, and maybe I just like to say divine timing, preparedness will meet opportunity, and that's how we were able to push the needle. So the thing is for us to do the preparatory work. You can see we mentioned quite a number of studies. So we'll do the studies and keep trying to engage stakeholders. It might be, for instance, the person who is trying to help us push the mining agenda forward is not even someone we thought about at all. So we now know that, okay, we need to look at, certain types of stakeholders to engage with. When we did for the oil and gas and power, we found that the law is probably, you can say it's robust, the Petroleum Industry Bill and the revised 2020 Power Sector Bill. They're probably, world-class, but implementation is challenging. So our focus here is now really on how to now provide the evidence that the government needs to move on implementation of those key aspects. As I mentioned earlier, the work of advocacy is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not for the faint-hearted. I'm telling you, especially if you join the NESG, you want to see that change immediately, but it really takes time and dedication, and you just need to not fall in love with the reforms, because the reform process will keep breaking your heart. But it's like being in a very bad marriage, but you still remain there maybe for the kids. So we're still here because of the nation. Thank you.
Jackson, are you there? Jackson? Is Deborah there?
Thank you, ma'am, for
You are the moderator now. We are not
response.
hearing you.
Hello? Yes, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your response. The other questions on the message angle, I think I'll direct this one. Does the debt department do evaluation and developmental impacts of policy being made? I'll direct it to Stephen Daniels and also Madam Amanda. This is a question by Folakemi. Stephen Daniels, are you there? So, Madam Amanda, I would like you to respond to it.
Yeah, the NESG, you said department, but I guess you mean NESG. Yes, I believe the NESG does, and publishes the development impact of, yeah, it does the evaluation and the development impact of some of the government policies. No, I think I wish someone from the NSG would answer that, but I would say that here in the thematic group, what we've included in our advocacy strategies, starting from now, is that we will be monitoring and evaluating our own advocacy impact. So if someone from energy would answer whether they have evaluated the development impact of government policies, I'm not sure. But if it's in terms of evaluating the NESG's advocacy impact, yes, NESG I've seen such reports. But then here in the thematic group, in the policy commission also, we have put clear indicators to monitor our own impact and work. Thank you.
Okay. Before Tosin Abdul comes, Abdul Gafar speaks, I will respond a bit to Folakemi's thoughts. Yes, on almost every policy position, NESG has something to say about it and evaluates the entire process. Thank you. So, Mr. Abdul Gafar, you can unmute your mic to speak.
Oh, sorry, probably I forgot to raise hand down, so I've already spoken. Sorry.
Okay.
My hand is down. Thank you.
Folakemi, your hands are up. Can you
Yeah,
speak?
yes, my hands are up. Thank you so much. You see, I'm just so concerned that we do a lot of policies, we do a lot of talking, but when you look at the impacts, maybe job creation and everything, we don't really see it. So I just wonder how NESG is really pushing hard to really get the real impact of all these policies, because the truth of the matter is that I'm sure from 1960, we have loads and loads of policies that all we need to do is just to improve on it, looking at the situation at every point in time. But I'm not sure that we really have the real developmental impact, like how many jobs were created, because at the end of the day, it's just like we are doing a talk show. So I'm more interested in that developmental impact of most of these things and how NESG is capturing it and letting people know that this is what the government is doing, this is the impact, this is what is, so I'm just interested in that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Folakemi. Indeed, the NESG does track the different government policies, and we are in the process of about releasing an impact assessment of the 30 years since NESG has been in place. This is a process that started sometime last year, the next 30, and very soon we should be able to release that impact assessment report for public consumption. However, on different policies that have been made by government over the years, we've released some report, if you go to our website, of these different briefs on the policy that we've recommended to government and their current status. So if you go to our website, you see most of those documents on our website. I hope that helps.
Yeah, but I was taken aback when what's her name? Amanda said that they've been trying to see one minister since last year. I think he makes it very discouraging if MDAs cannot work together without too much protocols. I know there is protocol in civil service, without too much protocol, because this, at the end of the day, we are all working towards the same goal, to develop our country. But all these bottlenecks, I don't know, how is NESG and trying to handle them?
So we are a private sector organization that work through the public-private dialogue mechanism I mentioned. We can advise and try to guide the government, but we don't have, we can't force their hands. We try to, as much as possible, provide kind of an advisory to the government. But at the end of the day, the decision to either meet with us or not is left with the government to decide.
Yeah, I know, but that's why I'm saying that it makes the whole thing quite cumbersome sometimes, because everybody has good intentions, and this bottleneck, I don't think it should be there. Okay.
We're working with Madam Adiza's office, who are in charge of the overall government's policy coordination. And the NESG provides support through that platform to ensure that, the KPIs that they've been given by the executive is monitored. And we provide support to Adiza's office for those policies. So where it becomes absolutely necessary, we'll get ourselves in there.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
and now
you.
I think I have a bit of a better understanding, because you are a private sector driven organization. But sometimes I wonder, how do we really make these things to really be a catalyst for development of the country? We have so many documents, everything is documented, everything is written, experts here and there are experts everywhere. But the man on the streets don't even know what the experts are doing. What I'm just trying to say is that if there is a way that this can be translated to visible development for the common man, that will make everybody happy at the end of the day. Like the young man that said that he's making some stuff for the mining sector, but he doesn't know how to get finance. I don't think that should even be a question for this place, because by now you should know that you can go to BOI, you can go to all these places, all these things are available. That's why I'm saying that sometimes people don't even know that all these things are available. Maybe there's a way NESG can use other stakeholders to drive home or to drive to the grassroots some of the things they are doing, that it's not only in Abuja that stuff is happening. But I must commend you that you are doing this. But we need more practical, no more theory or policy development. But there are too many policies. What we need.
Polake, you are muted.
Yeah. I can't. Hello. You can't hear me.
Yeah,
hello?
I can hear you now.
No, we heard you, man.
But you heard me now, because
we heard
I only unmuted after. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for your comment, ma. Like I mentioned in my presentation, advocates like you and myself still have to make sure that there's that convergence. I will keep doing our best to ensure that it's not just ending a policy, but implementation on the government side. Thank you very much for your comments, man.
Thank you, and well done. I'm ready to be a volunteer. So we'll see.
What sector is Madam
I'm
Folake?
representing women in mining.
Oh, women in mining. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get in touch with you.
Okay.
So I would like Baramat's the one on development, on providing agenda. That's why I said we should ask for the government.
Jackson, you are not audible. We are not hearing you well. What were you saying? Hello, Jackson. Okay, is Deborah there?
Yes, I am, Doc.
Yeah, I think Jackson has an issue.
Jackson, we can't hear you clearly, but I think he was trying to read out a question and asking Miss Amanda to respond. I'm not sure what question it was reading out because I couldn't hear him clearly.
Okay, I think he has maybe some connection issues. Well, at this point, I don't know. Look at our agenda. I think we should be rounding up now. Our time is actually practically up. Unless there is any other person that wants to speak, I think we should be rounding up at this point. Amanda, any other comments before we round up?
Just to encourage everyone to please join the thematic group.
Okay.
And to be ready to please work with us.
Sorry,
So
what does it take to join the thematic group?
Sorry?
What does it take to join the thematic group?
Okay, the link is provided in the, Deborah can give us some more information, but the link is in the chat. Yeah, in the chat.
Does it attract any fee, or we just join and be looking at what is happening?
It's not no fee. It's for all Nigerians and all interested stakeholders who want to, advocate for change. And it involves participating in doing the work. As I said, all of us that spoke today are volunteers. All of us that made presentations, they are volunteers. So it's a lot of work that we're doing. You're not paid, and NESG has been running this model for, I think, almost 30 years. There are some people that were on the board that started off as doing what we're doing. There are some captains of industry that have passed through this process. So there's quite a lot of policies that have been designed and implemented that came as a result of this kind of volunteer work that the policy commissions do. So it also provides a platform, for you to feel that sense of satisfaction that I am participating in influencing change in Nigeria. Sometimes it's when we sit at home or in among friends or on social media and what rambling about what the government's done or not done, or criticizing a policy of government, and we have very good ideas. So this platform provides that medium for you to express yourself, work with other professionals, also learn more, and participate in nation building.
Okay, that's a very good one. We'll be obliged to be a volunteer. I'm into mining, and when people talk about mining, it's something that is very broad. And you will wonder why even the government are not invested in mining. That should tell you that there's a question mark irrespective of what we have to develop our country. But like somebody did mention, saying that they've been trying to push to see a minister for this. The way Nigeria works, if we are not if we don't have anybody from this NESG as a politician to see that all these things is being implemented, it's going to be very, very rare. It's just going to be something that we keep pushing. And again, if the minister or anybody in government does not have any interest in the presentation which we are giving to them, it will not fly. May God help us. Thank you.
Okay, let me at this point now express our appreciation to all participants, our speakers, our facilitators, thematic leads, and all those that have expressed interest to be part of the volunteers. Please, once again, the link is there at the chat room. Madam Folake, Mr. Boss, and the rest of them. We'll be happy to welcome you on board. And we have taken note of all the comments and want to assure you that this is not just talking about the issues, it's also about engaging the authorities to ensure that we achieve the kind of change and transformation that we seek to achieve. We will not give up. Sometimes these issues can be a bit challenging, sometimes frustrating, but this is our country. We cannot, and it's not a hopeless situation, I must say. So we continue to pursue these advocacy objectives to ensure that we provide a much better environment for those who are committed to creating wealth, to creating jobs, to ensuring that we have a much better economy in our country. So I want to thank all of you once again. We thank you for honoring our invitation and for your very valuable contributions. Thank you very much. So have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you.
Prosperity will judge all of us right.
Amen.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.